welcome back to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. And for today's episode, happy to welcome Ellis Gordon, Rutgers senior, was the sports editor for the Daily Targum and also does play-by-play for WRSU. Thought it would be great to get his perspective on Rutgers athletics and his time as a student at Rutgers. Ellis, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. As I said to you before the show, I'm a big fan of the Scarlet Faithful, so glad I can be on. And yeah.
Absolutely. I think, we sat next to each other at the Rutgers Princeton game to start the season. And, I was like, oh, he knows his stuff. So I figured I've always wanted to have you on. So I figured this is a good time. Last week of the regular season for Rutgers basketball, senior days on Sunday. I'm sure, from your own experience, just covering this team and your roles, at RSU and Targum, this is certainly a sentimental week for you as well. Just wanted to ask you to start just what it's all meant for you as a student. I'm sure you're not fully reflecting yet, but just your ability to be a journalist and cover Rutgers athletics and also do it at a time when Rutgers has only continued to rise up the Big Ten in your tenure at Rutgers.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been great. I've been pushing off those thoughts for now, but overall it's been really, really great. And I came into college not actually wanting to be. I was going to be like poli-sci history major, but then I was bored over COVID, nothing to do, so I applied for the Targum, and then Targum led me to WRSU because of actually Chris Sakonis, who now works for 247. So shout out Chris, love that guy. But yeah, so and then I was like, because I had such a positive experience covering Rutgers sports for both those. WRSU and Targum, I decided to be a journalism major. So it's kind of shaped my college experience. And in terms of as you mentioned, what a time to cover Rutgers athletics. Both my parents went to Rutgers, so I've always been a casual Rutgers fan. But, as I've gotten here, I've gotten obviously more and more than fan and then to covering it, into a role of covering it. So they've kind of grown with me, I would say. So it's been an exciting time to cover Rutgers sports. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, I'm trying to put those thoughts off of being a senior, but it was a good time.
Well, someone that went to Rutgers when the football team won 8 games in 4 years, and the basketball team never made the postseason. I'm insanely jealous of your time at Rutgers, and wanted to ask, just in terms of the basketball program, how it resonated with the students. Even though this year has been a little bit of a down year, it seems like student interest is still really high. Obviously, the Riot Squad does a great job, but just the amount of students that line up for games now. I mean, how much of is it really a buzz on campus, and how sustainable do you think that is?
No, I definitely think that it's a very palpable buzz. Even now, when there's obviously been a down season. I mean, I remember the first time truly realizing that was the NCAA tournament game versus Houston, because even though obviously we're still semi-lockdown at that point and only a couple students were on campus, I was on campus. So I went up with some of my friends to the yard where they have the big TV, and I didn't, maybe because of COVID or maybe just because I didn't fully realize, the fandom, because I hadn't been to a game yet when they were obviously good. That like how people showed up to the yard to watch, it was packed in there. And I think that was my first moment, even though the result didn't go their way that game. That was my first moment of all right, this is a general very good buzz, and everyone was into it. Of course, that was there. It was that was my first really, really positive in-person experience. And that buzz has only obviously continued throughout. And I think the good thing with, I'll say about Rutgers, but I think anyone that if you build it, they'll come. And that's kind of been true of Rutgers too. And they're going to have, because of what Coach Pikiell has done, there's going to be some grace periods of, okay, you can have a down year or two, because that loyalty has been from both sides. Coach Pikiell delivered results. The fans came. Now in a down year, I still think you still see most of the fans are coming. Now, obviously, if there'd be 4 or 5 down years from here, that'll obviously dwindle. But I think because of the job Coach Pikiell has done, he's bought himself into the good graces of fans. So you're going to see positive attendance. Well, obviously next year is going to be insane, but regardless, you've bought yourself a down year here or there too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it is, for someone like me, it's fun to see so many students involved and happy and, so into games. And the RAC was always a great environment, even when I was there, when Rutgers, wasn't, was struggling some in the Big East, but to see it now is really, it's a lot of fun. Just in terms of, I want to ask you about football as well. Obviously, football has been on its way up during your run at Rutgers. Also, how much has that buzz built? And I guess is there a surprise? Obviously, students like yourself weren't, really following the team back when Schiano was in his first tenure. How much of his rep kind of was out there when he got there, and how much confidence, I guess, was there that he could build this thing the way he has?
I think just because good his first tenure was, and obviously he's been to the NFL. Like I think his rep was pretty high already, and I think it was just he got students to go. I think he was just getting students to stay. And I've had a unique experience with football too because I've actually never covered, even though I'm a sports editor, I haven't actually physically covered football unless I was in the radio a couple times. But regardless, so I'm in the student section usually, and I think Sean was always able to get students out. It was just getting them to stay, and this really was the first year that you saw students stay for the Ohio State game, Virginia Tech game. They stayed, and I think that's just going to, as I said with basketball, which is a few years more down the line. I think in their progression, that's just going to build, right? And I think if you're a incoming Rutgers student, or even a junior, sophomore, freshman, right? I think you have a lot to be excited for in that industry. I mean, football, you always are going to have, because of what football is just to America, you're always going to have people partying, but not going into games. That's always going to happen. That happens even in the big programs. It's just it's just about the percentages. And I think the more the football team succeeds, the more that percentage is going to be more 50-50. And so I think next year, because of the excitement around the football team as well, I may no longer be in the student section, though I still have a sibling here, so I might sneak in there once or twice. But other than that, I still think that it's going to attendance and staying is going to go on up too for students.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I attended a few tailgates in my time and did not go into the game back when Rutgers really was struggling. My senior year, they won one game against Syracuse at the end of the season. But went to many games too as growing up and obviously as a student too. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Is that it's not only because I think Rutgers does a great job with the tailgating scene and obviously the boardwalk now, and they do more than they've ever done before just in terms of making it an experience and in of itself. But it's getting those percentages more and more to get people to stay and come in. Because I think that was one thing even the year before, there were a lot of students at the start. And then, as things would unravel as the game went on, obviously it was tough to keep people there. I know you said before we spoke that you were the broadcaster for RSU for the Virginia Tech game. That was obviously, I think, kind of a turning point in the season where we all kind of thought, okay, this could be a really good year. This team is better than maybe we all thought they would be. What was that environment like, calling the game, but also just the reaction from students and kind of the buzz after that win?
No, it was a great environment. It was also just a great call because they scored a lot. Even when Rutgers wins, you don't necessarily expect them to score that much. So it was a great call, great environment all around. And you're totally right. That buzz was different after that game because I think in the years past, right, Rutgers wasn't necessarily losing. Well, I guess in Schiano 2.0, I mean, Rutgers wasn't necessarily losing the games that they weren't getting upset, but they weren't winning the 50-50 games. And Virginia Tech was, in my estimation, I really think the first 50-50 game that they won. And I think that buzz just, that kept students there for the next game, right? It's about building credibility because, I mean, as you've covered, Rutgers, you've covered Rutgers. Rutgers isn't the only game in town. In fact, they're in the New York City tri-state area. There's so many games in town. So just the cold hard reality is you're going to have to give them a product to deliver, right? It's not like Ole Miss where you have nowhere else to go to but Ole Miss, so they can have a couple down years. You'll still get fan attendance. So I think that winning that first 50-50 game was huge for the rest of the momentum from a fan-wise. And I think you're going to see the same thing in 2024. I don't have their schedule off the top of my head in terms of what week they're playing who. I can pull that up right now. But if they win that first 50-50 football game they play, I'm looking at that right now, actually. Actually, Virginia Tech again in Blacksburg. But also, so that's their first 50-50 game again, too. If they win that, I think you're going to see the momentum go up, right? And all of a sudden, students are going to be a lot more excited. And I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think that, also just kids growing up in Jersey, you're right. You grow up a professional sports fan in New Jersey a little bit different than you do in other states, I think, just because there are so many options. And obviously you have the Philly sports area, and then New York, and multiple teams in every league. But I think, as you said, having parents who went to Rutgers, and now being there, you identify so much more as a Rutgers fan. I guess how important do you think the time, or I guess in terms of talking to your friends and other people that cover that, do you think that there's a lasting effect now that the experiences you guys have had, is going to keep the interest level and the fandom going, as you grow older, alumni and all that?
Well, with me and my friends, I would say 100%. But I think more towards a broader general public, there still needs to be a bigger brand push. And luckily, that might come in 2024. And by bigger brand push, I mean, like, I love the smaller Rutgers sports, partly because in my year with the Targum, editing them, I've had to edit all the articles for them. So I've been covering them extensively. But, like, to be honest, the brand comes from football and basketball. And when you have a year coming up where both teams can take a massive step forward to national spotlights, right? Like that would be massive for a general public brand, because right, you're not getting the people like I always like sports, so I'll always and I go to Rutgers, so I'll be a Rutgers, even I'll cover Rutgers and I'll be a Rutgers fan, and that same for a lot of my friends who like sports. But what you're really trying to get when you really get those massive crowds, right? What basketball has done is you get people who are not necessarily into sports, but like they like sports and they're also really like their school. And so they'll only go if the brand and the product is strong. So I think that's why 2024 is so important. Not important, but also exciting, because you have two programs really that could take another leap forward, and that'll only get people that are kind of into sports, but also like the school, two games, generate that excitement. And as you mentioned, that usually is long lasting, because if you had a positive experience in the school, chances are you're going to have a positive. You're going to stick with it outside of school.
Yeah, great point. So last thing on football, what is your feeling on this team in terms of what they potentially could do next season, and just in terms of, I guess, how sustainable you think that the build is that Schiano has right now, and the kind of the long term future that the program has in the ever changing Big Ten?
I think I think next year's. I'm really excited for next year. I think it's just really hard to. It's really hard to see where they're at because of the quarterback play, not knowing who's going to be quarterback, and not knowing if it is Wimsatt, if he's going to take a step up, right? Because I think everything else, you're looking at, you can nitpick here and there, right? I think they could use an extra cornerback. I think they could use maybe an extra wide receiver, but every non-Alabama roster is going to have that, right? So I think the roster around the quarterback is just so strong, and the depth is. I do truly like. I know Schiano always talks about the pipeline, and Schiano has the Schianoisms that he very much harps on. But there's 100% truth to it. I think you're going to see a lot more depth. Where like 2 years ago, when injuries come, or I guess a year ago, but from next season it'll be 2 years ago. The 2022 season, injuries completely derailed the season because of injuries and unluckiness, but also a lack of depth. So I think that around the defense, I think the defense could be top 3 in the Big Ten. I really do. I'm really, really, really high on this defense. But as we all know, the offense can only go so far without a strong quarterback. And it's hard to dissect them when you don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. And like I haven't seen I've seen Wimsatt tape. He obviously needs to take a step forward. No one's ever knows that. And I haven't seen enough Ethan Kaliak-Manis tape to also feel like he also needs to take a step forward either. So it's kind of hard from that end. In terms of the long-term sustainability of the program, I don't think you could expect Rutgers to ever be like Ohio State or Michigan in the Big Ten, just because like the resources are just I don't think they're ever going to be there. It's too hard with football. But I think you could see them be like maybe a more offensively inclined, for hopefully for the fans, version of that Iowa program, right? I think that's what you're striving for, where you're consistently putting out a winning product, and then you're going to have a year here and there where you're like, wow, this team, and now with the 12-team championship, this team can make a first round, pull off an upset, maybe get to the semifinals off a crazy ride everyone. So I think that's obviously the highest goal you trying to reach if you're Rutgers. And I think that is somewhat. I mean, I think that is achievable. It'll take a while to go right, but I think that is a realistic goal Rutgers fans could expect from Schiano, and you're starting to see him slowly build it out because, like, obviously you saw it with 2006, and that took some time. Football just takes some time, and then 2007, there's some bad losses, but also like overall, you upset number 2 UCF, USF, excuse me, and so I think that's what you can that should be the goal. And I think Rutgers is on track. Obviously, there's a lot more to go. There's a lot more to get here, but I think Rutgers has been on a steady rise, so you have to be happy about that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the Iowa comp is definitely a good one and something that is achievable. And I don't know. I look at Ferentz and Schiano. I feel like they're kind of similar in just their demeanor and their approach and their philosophy and how to win. And that stability that both of them have brought their own program. So I really think that that's a great call in terms of what Rutgers could be. And I think now it's going to be really interesting too without divisions. And the schedule's changing every year. That it really is opportunity, and you're right. The fact that it coincides at the same time with the playoff expanding, it really is makes things that much more exciting and interesting. And not that Rutgers necessarily has a great chance every year, but certainly more realistic of an opportunity to go to the playoffs than they ever had before. So it's good timing there. Shifting to basketball, obviously it's been a little bit of a disappointing season. This might be a little challenging, but what would you say are the positive takeaways or what we could take away from a positive perspective, despite how this season has gone so far?
Yeah, I think there still is a couple of positive takeaways. Let's start with the obvious one, Jeremiah Williams, right? Like he's been fantastic, and I think what makes it so exciting about him is like he's a perfect fit for the 2024 team. Obviously, if he stays, though, I don't know, like because he's a 2-time transfer, but also the rules are weird. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just going to assuming if he stays, right, like he really is a perfect fit. Because I mean, I don't want to go too much into it because everyone's talked about it, including you. But you need veterans to go far in the NCAA tournament, no matter how amazing your freshmen are. And the freshmen are amazing. You need veterans, and Jeremiah Williams is that perfect backcourt veteran for him. Also sticking with the backcourt, I think JaMychal Davis. I think he's going to be an important piece next year. He has shown extreme. I mean, Pikiell already trusts him usually on the team's best guards. And I really think that I don't think he's going to transfer because we all know that him and Ace Bailey are best friends. So I think it's safe to say that. And I think he's shown enough offensively, right? Like it's not like Jalen Miller and Jalen Miller. Love Jalen Miller. Love to talk Jalen Miller. He was a great guy. But he just didn't have enough offensively to justify being on the court. Now, JaMychal Davis still could work on his offense, of course, but he's shown enough to justify being on the court. Obviously, I don't think he'll get that much starting time with Dylan Harper next year and Jeremiah Williams, but I think you'll still see him contribute good minutes, and he's going to be a Rutgers fan favorite off the bench because he's going to bring that defensive intensity that, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper have the potential to be great defenders. But when you have guys like that, they're going to put most of their energy on the offensive end, as they should. And that doesn't mean they're going to be bad defenders. Coach Pikiell's not going to play them if they're bad defenders. We already know that. But I think JaMychal Davis is really, really positive. And, I think I've seen Gavin Griffith has really struggled this year. There's no secret to that. But I think the last 2 games I've been really impressed, first off, with his defense. I think his defensive awareness still needs some work. But overall, I've seen him, like last game when Nebraska isolated Juwan Gary and him twice. Fred Hoiberg definitely thought those were 2 baskets, and Gavin Griffiths blocked them both. So he did a much better job moving his feet defensively. He used to bite for so many pump fakes. Now he's staying on the ground, keeping very versatile. And on offense, it's hard to diagnose. He just doesn't see, like, I don't know if this is the coaching staff or not, but in the beginning of the season, like, he wasn't like getting the flow, or the coaching staff wasn't getting him in flow. I honestly don't know. Right. I don't go to practices every time. I don't know. Maybe it's probably a bit of both, to be honest. But now you saw him. Yeah, he was only 3 for 10 against Nebraska, but I saw him more comfortable kicking it out better. He hit 2 deep shots, which we all knew he could do, and you saw his confidence return. He drove a couple times too with varying but he can do it, and that you just want to start doing that. So I think his development will be big because again, I don't necessarily expect Gavin to start, but like I think something we realized when comparing that 2021 NCAA tournament team when they lost to Notre Dame to the team that almost beat Houston, right? The big difference there, because I still think, Coach Pikiell got a lot of slack for saying that was his best starting five, because of how badly they struggled to start the season. But I still think it was. They just didn't really have a lot of bench depth. Mag wasn't necessarily fully to his development yet. Hyatt was the sixth man, but outside of that, it was like Dean Reber. Um, and that 2020 team had Jacob Young coming off the bench. Montez Mathis was streaky, but when he was on, he was on. And so I think Gavin Griffith can kind of serve that Montez Mathis role next year, which shouldn't be an insult because if he drains a couple corner threes, able to kick and drive, like that's going to be so valuable to this team. They're going to need to be eight. They're going to need eight talented people deep, eight talented players deep if they want to make that deep NCAA tournament run.
Yeah, all great points and three key players that I think for sure are super important to next season and make it really relevant and interesting to continue to see how they finish out this current season. I've been really impressed with JaMychal Davis, just fearlessness. Like he's just a gamer. Like you're right. He can improve offensively. I think he has shown some flashes, but yeah, defensively he's definitely fit right in. And I think just his ability to just compete and not be even some of the shots he's taken. Maybe they're not the best shot selection, but he's not afraid of the moment. And I think as freshmen sometimes you worry about that. And I think you're right. Gavin definitely looks more comfortable, especially on the defensive end. That was a great point about Nebraska. And I think you're right. I think the coaching staff. I think there has been a little bit of feeling out on both ends in terms of how to use him most effectively, how to get him involved. I still think his shot selection is a little questionable at times because he's, a little impatient. But I think also next year with like Dylan Harper, that's a guy that's going to be able to, I think, set him up better. You're going to have, the ability to have other guys that defenses have to focus on. That's going to open up some space for him. I think the space will be better. So, yeah, I agree. Lots of things to be excited about. Just in terms of this. Go ahead.
I also think off that point, and I'm not like some like basketball X's and O like aficionado, but I think that you obviously Coach Pikiell hasn't run the best offense this year. I mean, the offense has been horrible, just that's straight up. But I think what he does a lot of the times is he sets up a lot of like he'll go into like a horns down action, and then he wants like one quick move or just like a quick isolation to his better players. And this year, he's really only got Jeremiah Williams to do that. But next year, with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, right, and you could still have talked about offensive coordinator, yada yada. But I just think if they ran this offense next year, right, with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, right, this version of the offense, they obviously still wouldn't be top 50, and I think that still could be talked about because that could, with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, just because of how versatile they are, the offensive options are endless. But regardless, just considering this offense with Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, I think they would be around a top 100 offense just because Ace Bailey is such a good isolation scorer and Dylan Harper is such a smart playmaker that they can run those actions a lot better instead of I guess what it says, Pikiell, a lot of his actions rely on the talent of the team, right? On Geo Baker, Ron Harper making a play. But when you have a Geo Baker, Ron Harper, right, like they can make the play. So it's not necessarily it's a bit of a flaw when you don't have guys who can make a play, but also when you have a guy like Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper who both are insanely talented on the offensive end and versatile, as I said before, right? Like you're going to see a much, much better offense, even if Coach Pikiell doesn't bring in an offensive coordinator, which I think you could debate whether he should or shouldn't. But regardless, I think that's more exciting too.
Yeah, I love that point, and I agree with you. I think that I think it gets understated in terms of thinking like they don't run offensive schemes or they don't have concepts of what they're trying to do.
No, they do.
Of course they do. But you're right. It's because I also think yes, they've been a terrible shooting team, but I think that there's reasons for why they've shot as poorly as they have. It's not just that they're bad shooters. It's more of how they're running the offense. How they're lacking patience, how they're lacking spacing. And like you said, you're going to have certain guys on that team next year that are going to draw the attention of the defense. You're going to draw more double teams than certain guys. You're going to create opportunities for other guys that aren't really there this year. And I think to your point about Gavin, I mean, my biggest concern right now, and it's way too early to digest the roster. We don't know, but every good, like look at the good Big Ten teams. Everybody has 2, 3, 4 guys that can knock it down from 3. And I think for Rutgers, that's a big thing that you have to look at the roster next year and who's going to be. We know Dylan Harper and Ace, they can hit threes, but is it fair to expect them to be 40% from 3 on a regular basis? I don't know, but I think you're right. For Gavin, that's a huge opportunity for him. But I do think, that just in terms of upgrading the talent, schemes can all of it. Coaching's coaching, and coaches sometimes are as they're geniuses as good as their players are, and they're not good coaches when they don't have the execution from their players. So I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think it's just I'm not letting Pikiell off the hook, but I think at the same time, you're right. What they're doing this year, next year could still be a lot better simply because of the different talent level they're going to have.
I think Coach Pikiell could run more like expansive schemes and stuff. And I have some ideas, but I don't want to like say them because again, I'm not an X's and O's aficionado. I think I should leave that to someone better than me. But they are like for people that don't realize they are running schemes out there. Like they 100% are, and a lot of those are just getting blown up because it's because the players just aren't running them well, to be honest, or they're just not playing to the player's strength. I mean, again, as you said, it's definitely a both issue. But they are like I see people sometimes be like they're not running anything out there. I'm like, no, I just saw them run something. They just ran it badly. There's a difference, right? They're like I think that is a misconception of Coach Pikiell because like he's running this incredible defense where all the players switch and stuff, but on offense he's just like I don't know, like can we curse on here? I don't know. Fuck, we ball. You can cut that out if not. But like that's not actually what's happening, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't criticize Coach Pikiell for his schemes. I think there's definitely offensively ways to get better, much better. But like they're doing stuff out there. I promise you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think honestly, I've always I remember him talking about John Beilein and wanting to be like the Michigan, the schemes that they ran, and John Beilein told a story a couple years ago and talking to Pikiell, and Pikiell kind of even admitted it. I've always thought this is that I think to get his players to buy in and play so hard defensively and do so much that he asks of them, I do think that he is more open to, he can live with some bad offensive sets because he knows that they're bought in defensively. And, he allows his guys, he's not going to come down on guys for taking a bad shot because the style in which he wants to play, he needs those guys playing defense. So if it results in, I always felt that, a little bit with Caleb McConnell too. It was like he had a tendency at times to maybe force things so much, but you never saw, people want to argue about accountability and all that stuff. But at the same time, you knew Caleb McConnell was giving you so much defensively that he could live with whatever maybe mistakes he made on the offensive end. And I think you'll see a combination. That's why I'm so fascinated by the talent level increasing.
100%.
If he can get them to elevate defensively, right? Like you said, star players typically are more offensive minded. I also think Dylan Harper, I think another flaw with this season is that, there isn't as good as Jeremiah Owens has been. They don't have a natural point guard out there. And I think that's why things start to break down. And like you're saying, some of the sets and schemes are running, all of a sudden they just don't work. And I think part of that is they don't have a floor general that has the patience, that has the vision, that has the passing ability, that, also can, when things do get blown up, maybe still make a play and make something out of nothing. And I think that's kind of, I don't know if people are expecting Dylan Harper to be a 20-point scorer. I'm certainly not. But I think just his ability to run the offense and to create offense for others, I think that's where his strength is. And that's why I think he's a perfect fit. Aside from the stars and the hype and all that, I just think that, for what Pikiell wants to do, I think I actually think Pikiell's been looking for this type of point guard his entire tenure. Where I don't know if you remember, he wanted Jose Alvarado, and that was a big one, and that would have changed the trajectory. But he's always wanted that, dynamic point guard who, is a dual threat, can defend, but also distribute and score. And, I just think Dylan, for all the hype, it's like, no, he fits that box of exactly what Pikiell's been wanting. And I'm really fascinated to see how that results and how he has that guy finally and how everything kind of meshes together next season.
100%. And I don't think Cliff is going to stay, to be honest. But if Cliff were to stay, right, Dylan Harper would elevate his game so much. I think you're going to see, and I think Paul was an underrated point guard too when he played it like that. But at the end of the day, he didn't have that explosiveness to burst into the lane and then just like throw up an alley oop or just find Cliff inside. It was more back down, back down, back down, wear the defense out, pass it to Cliff inside. So I think if Cliff were to stay, which I don't think will happen, but the idea is any big center like Cliff in the Cliff mold will feast with Dylan Harper down low and won't have to do and could also be a fantastic defender. So I think it's going to be, 2024 is such a big year for Coach Pikiell because you are coming off the down year, but also like this is your chance to break through the ceiling, right? This is the chance to keep the positive momentum going, break through the ceiling, and you have all the talent for it. But it's not going to be easy to put the pieces together, whether chemistry wise or not, because as I said, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, right? They're coming in, they're freshmen, but they're going to have big egos. Jeremiah Williams is obviously a leader, but he's a character. Like, right, I'm not saying they're going to all like fight or stuff. I don't expect that to happen at all. I'm just saying that like you're going to have you got great puzzle pieces, but you got to put the pieces together because if you don't, then it could be a warning sign, like Coach, Rutgers can't handle big stars. So it's a big inflection point for Rutgers. But I think as a fan, that makes it really exciting, right? Like that's so exciting. It can go one way or another, right? It's about the process, and the process is, the high reward, a good process.
Yeah, absolutely. All eyes are going to be in the program, and you're right. I mean, chemistry is going to be huge, and accepting of roles, and even with the rest of the recruiting class, guys that are used to being stars are going to be coming in and having to earn minutes, and it's not going to come easy at this level. But even for Dylan and Ace, there's going to be an adjustment in terms of playing at this level and playing in the Big Ten. I think also it'll be interesting to see what he does with the schedule in terms of non-conference, because they obviously need to be tested. But it's be curious to see how much he has early on in terms of, games they have or if they're in a tournament or things like that. But these are guys that love the spotlight. And I've said this before, like they're taking the hard road, right? They could have taken the easy road, gone to Duke, gone to Kentucky, Kansas, wherever. I mean, they could have gone anywhere. But they're choosing to come to a program that, is coming off a down year. I mean, they didn't know that at the time, but still, they know it's a program that hasn't completely broke through. It's a blue-collar program. It's a defensive-first program. Like, they're coming here for a reason. And I think they know that he's going to make them better. And I'm just really – it's very exciting. And I love talking shop with you about this. So we'll do it again soon. But just to wrap it up with Senior Day coming up and how this team can finish the season – what are you looking for this final week at Wisconsin, home against Ohio State, and then obviously the Big Ten tournament next week? And how important do you think it is that they at least have some type of positive part of this finish rather than just kind of bottoming out? And how much will that really impact the season, off season?
I'm not sure it really will impact this off season at this point at all. But you always just want to finish positive for your seniors, right? Like. That's just always important. And winning Senior Day, I don't think you should expect them to be Wisconsin Bowl center. Because even though we've had success there in the past, that Wisconsin team is still very good. And we beat them at Jersey Mike's Arena, but also that was one of our hottest shooting nights. I don't think we'll beat them there, but I think winning Senior Day against Ohio State, yes, Ohio State's on the up, but that's a winnable game. And I think that not should be expected, but that would be a good way to go out. And you never want to fall out on Wednesday, even if they are in the tournament on Wednesday. They play Wednesday, and I will be there, but You never want to bottom out on Wednesday. Just not a good look. So win at least the first game. But in terms of how I think it impacts the offseason, I'm not really sure it will. But it's just you want to like honor your seniors by having a strong last game, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Ellis Gordon, really appreciate all your insight. It was fun talking to you, and hope you enjoy the rest of your senior season, and hope for your sake too they make a run next week at the Big Ten tournament while you're covering them, and definitely have you back again soon. But thanks for all your insight, and enjoy the rest of your time at Rutgers, and hopefully there's more memories to come just on the sports field as well as at school as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon, man.
All All right. And thanks so much for listening to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. Once again, I'll talk to you tomorrow.